Welcome back to Klepper's Corner. Today in history. It's January 16th, a date that feels less like a normal square on the calendar and more like a cosmic grab bag where empires are founded, museums open their doors, revolutions ignite, musicians change the world, and mathematicians slide into the DMs of Cambridge. Somehow, all these things happened on the same date, which means either the universe loves a theme or January 16th never learned how to pace itself. Segment 1, Empire, rebranding, and the ancient world's greatest PR moves. Let's begin in 27 BC, when Octavian performs the political equivalent of "I'm not touching you" on the Roman Senate. He gives up power, but keeps all the power, accepts the name Augustus, and invents the world's first, this is totally a republic, nothing autocratic happening here, empire. Romans here, first citizen, but what he really means is, I own the army, the borders, the provinces, and your future grandchildren's history textbooks. Then in 1547, Ivan IV gets crowned the first Tsar of all Rus, which is like Russia saying, "We see your empire, Rome, and we're going to remix it with more iconography and slightly more terror." He pulls from Byzantine ritual, adds divine authority, and suddenly Muscovy isn't a principality, it's an empire cosplaying as Caesar with snowier infrastructure. So January 16th, the day autocracy got 2 major software updates, complete with ceremonial branding and very few user agreement disclosures. Segment 2, Enlightenment, bureaucracy, and the invention of institutions you can argue with. Jump to 1759, when the British Museum opens and becomes the world's first public, look what we found, don't ask how we got it building. It's stuffed with books, artifacts, natural oddities, and at least 3 things probably mislabeled by someone with a monocle. But this is the Enlightenment. Knowledge for all, unless all includes people without written requests. Baby steps. Then we hit 1786, when Virginia passes the Statute for Religious Freedom, basically announcing, we've tried mandatory religion and it's giving us hives. Jefferson and Madison invent the separation of church and state, which later becomes the backbone of the First Amendment, and also the backbone of every American argument at Thanksgiving. Fast forward to 1883, and the Pendleton Act arrives, ending the spoils system where federal jobs were handed out like political party participation trophies. It's merit-based hiring. Revolutionary stuff at the time, now something we pretend to do on LinkedIn. Segment 3, Science, bravery, and very questionable policy choices. Now it's 1909, and Shackleton's team is dragging themselves across Antarctica, searching for the magnetic South Pole, which moves. So it's basically hide and seek on ice with frostbite. They get close enough, plant a flag, and Britain says, "We own this now," because that was the imperial version of dibs. In 1913, Ramanujan mails G.H. Hardy a math letter so intense it probably made the envelope sweat. It's filled with formulas no one else understands, and Hardy must decide whether this guy is a genius or a cosmic prankster. Spoiler, genius. One of the most extraordinary collaborations ever begins with a letter that says, "Here's some infinity, enjoy." Then 1919 hits, and America ratifies prohibition. Nothing says we've thought this through like banning alcohol nationwide. Almost instantly, crime spikes, speakeasies multiply, and bathtub gin becomes a thing. The only amendment we ever fully repealed, because sometimes history admits it messed up. Segment 4, Culture reinvents the world, one stage at a time. 1938, Benny Goodman walks into Carnegie Hall and says, "Jazz belongs here." The establishment gasps, the audience sits, and America's musical DNA permanently changes. Oh, and the performance is racially integrated, decades before baseball figures it out. Then 1957, the Cavern Club opens in Liverpool. Nobody knows it yet, but the foundational ecosystem for the Beatles has just materialized. If history were a superhero origin story, this club would be the radioactive spider. By 1964, Hello Dolly debuts and becomes the Broadway show so unstoppable it elbows the Beatles off the charts. Imagine being so powerful, your show tune dethrones the Fab Four. That's not musical theater, that's dominance. Segment 5, Revolution, Resistance, and Televised Warfare. 1965 brings the Mississippi burning arrests. The state refuses to prosecute the murderers of 3 civil rights workers. So the federal government finally steps in, like the adult in a room full of segregationist toddlers. It's one of the earliest cracks in the wall of impunity surrounding white supremacist violence. 4 years later, 1969 delivers a split screen of human courage and geopolitical pressure. In Prague, Jan Palach sets himself on fire to protest Soviet repression, shaking a nation's conscience. Meanwhile, in orbit, Soyuz 4 and 5 dock, humanity literally connecting 2 spacecraft, while back on Earth, one superpower disconnects human rights. Then, 1979, the Shah of Iran flees, ending 2,500 years of monarchy, and giving the Middle East a plot twist even Homer might have thought was dramatic. And finally, 1991, Operation Desert Storm begins, and CNN says, what if we put war on live television? Missiles fill the screen, pundits fill the silence, and the world learns that wars now come with graphics packages. Segment 6, Modern Transformation, Tragedy, and Leadership. 1992, the Chapultepec Peace Accords end a 12-year civil war in El Salvador. A guerrilla army becomes a political party, democracy gets a reboot, and peace, for once, sticks. Then, 2001, Laurent Desire Kabila is assassinated in Congo, proving that transitions of power in post-colonial states often arrive through tragedy rather than ceremony. His son steps in, the conflict continues, and the region struggles to define stability. 2 years later, 2003, Colombia launches on STS-107. The crew is brilliant, determined, and unaware that a piece of foam has sealed their fate. The mission becomes one of science, hope, and heartbreaking loss. A reminder that exploration carries both the best and worst of human possibility. And in 2006, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf takes office in Liberia, becoming Africa's first elected female head of state. She rebuilds a scarred nation, proves leadership doesn't require a Y chromosome, and earns a Nobel Prize along the way. It's the kind of moment that makes history stand up a little straighter. In conclusion, January 16th is a day where empires are born, museums open, revolutions spark, musicians transform culture, mathematicians rewrite the laws of numbers, and leaders reshape nations. It's a date obsessed with reinvention, sometimes triumphant, sometimes tragic, but always unmistakably human. History doesn't just happen on January 16th. It erupts. And every time it does, it leaves behind a reminder that progress is loud, messy, brilliant, and occasionally set to a Broadway soundtrack.